first chapter of a new novel, The Silent Verdict. Some mornings look completely ordinary, until you realize they were the last moments of happiness you never knew you were losing. The city of Greyhaven woke beneath a thin veil of fog. From his 12th floor balcony, Max Cross stood still, watching the traffic below move in perfect, predictable order. Everything ran on time, unscheduled, just like the life he believed he had built for himself. In the kitchen, his wife Luna was making coffee. The sound was familiar, stable, and safe. Max adjusted his tie in the mirror. His face looked tired, but his eyes held the practiced calm of a psychiatrist, a man who had mastered the art of hiding emotion. Years of listening to other people, his pain had taught him one simple rule: never let your own feelings surface. "You're skipping breakfast again," Luna said, her back to him as she worked. "I'll eat at the hospital," Max replied. It was a well-worn answer, a line from a script they both knew by heart. Neither of them pressed further. Just then, their daughter Emily ran out of her room, clutching a drawing in both hands. "Daddy, the sun is really big today," she announced proudly. Max knelt down to her level, a small smile touching his lips. "Why is it so big?" he asked. "So it won't disappear," she explained with a child's simple logic. For a brief moment, something tightened in Max's chest, a feeling he couldn't quite place. He smiled, ruffled her hair, and out of long professional habit, pushed that feeling aside, locking it away. Luna grabbed her coat. "I'll take Emily to school, then stop by the hospital later. Will you be home for dinner tonight?" she asked. "I'll try," he promised, though he knew he probably wouldn't make it. The door closed behind them, and the apartment fell silent. Max stood motionless, one hand resting on the cool kitchen counter. A strange sense of emptiness crept in, a feeling like something essential had already left his life, without any warning. At Greyhaven General Hospital, the day unfolded as usual. Patients, charts, diagnoses, listening without judgment. Max didn't think about Emily's drawing. He didn't think about her words. He just worked, until his phone vibrated. It was an unfamiliar number, Dr. Max Cross. The voice on the other end was formal, controlled, almost robotic. "Yes," Max answered. "We need you to come to the scene immediately." "What happened?" A brief pause stretched the silence. "Your wife and daughter have been involved in a serious incident." The pen slipped from Max's fingers and hit the floor with a soft, insignificant thud. Outside the window, the world kept moving, oblivious. But inside him, something broke, not violently, not with a crash but completely, and only one thought echoed in the silent, shattered space of his mind. Over and over again, the sun wasn't supposed to disappear. But that was only the beginning, because in that moment, Max Cross had no idea that justice was already turning its back on him. Chapter 2. The Scene. The mind has a strange way of protecting itself during trauma. It turns unbearable pain into a cold, step-by-step procedure. That's what happened to Max Cross. The police tape fluttered in the wind, a warning that came far too late. As Max stepped under it, the officers around him fell silent. Some looked away, others froze, not knowing what to say. He was known here, but not like this. The building was ordinary, the kind of place where tragedy likes to hide in plain sight. He followed the scent before he saw the scene, metallic, sharp, and unmistakable. A detective's voice droned on behind him, explaining timelines and procedures, but the words were just background noise. Max's focus narrowed, becoming sharp and clinical. He wasn't a husband anymore. He was an observer. Blood patterns, signs of forced entry, defensive wounds. His training took over, a shield against the horror. It was automatic, a defense mechanism he'd taught others, but never thought he'd need himself. Then he saw them. Luna, his wife, lay still, her body telling a story the official reports would later confirm. Her hand was stretched out, her fingers frozen just inches from where their daughter, Emily, should have been. Max knelt beside them. His breathing slowed, a reflex born from years of training, not from any sense of calm. Dissociation, he used to call it. A tool for survival. A forensic photographer hesitated, unsure. "It's okay," Max said, his voice quiet but steady. "Do your job." Someone asked him to confirm their identities. He managed a single nod. "Yes," he said, the words feeling like they belonged to someone else. "That's my wife." He paused, the air growing heavy. "And my daughter." When the white sheets were finally pulled over their bodies, something inside Max collapsed. It wasn't a loud, dramatic shatter, but a silent, complete implosion, like a building that had forgotten how to stand. He remained kneeling long after the room had emptied, lost in a silence that was absolute and irreversible. No tears came, no scream escaped. At that moment, Max Cross believed this was the worst thing that could ever happen to him. He was wrong. Chapter 3. Identification. Grief doesn't begin with tears, it begins with paperwork. The morgue was colder than necessary. Max stood behind the glass, a sterile barrier between him and the finality on the other side. As the sheet was drawn back, harsh fluorescent lights reflected off stainless steel surfaces, turning the room into something unreal. A scene from a medical drama he'd critiqued 100 times. The medical examiner spoke in neutral, practiced tones. Cause of death, estimated time, irreversible facts delivered with a professional distance that Max himself had perfected over the years. He listened, absorbing the information. He noted every detail, his mind instinctively processing data, even correcting a minor terminology error the examiner made. It was a reflex, not a conscious choice. Years of clinical training rushed in to fill the hollow space where raw emotion should have been. He was a doctor before he was a husband. When the examination was finished, a clipboard was handed to him. The request was simple, bureaucratic. Please confirm identity. Max took the pen. His hand was steady, a surgeon's hand. He signed his name with careful, almost defiant precision. Each letter clean and legible. Dr. Max Cross. The ink was dark against the pale paper, a definitive black mark. Outside the room, the controlled air of the hallway felt heavier, suffocating. He took one step, then two, then three, before his body finally betrayed the composure his mind had forced upon it. Max doubled over, vomiting violently into a stainless steel sink. He gripped the cold edges as his vision blurred, the world dissolving into a swirl of light and shadow. In the polished metal, his own reflection stared back pale, detached, a stranger wearing his face. He rinsed his mouth, the metallic taste of water doing little to wash away the bitterness. He straightened his coat, adjusted his posture, and put the mask of composure back on. Grief, he knew, could wait. It always did. There was work to be done, a protocol to follow. That night, he returned to the apartment alone. The silence was absolute. Emily's shoes were still by the doors, all neatly placed, waiting for feet that would never fill them again. A quiet monument to a life abruptly ended. Max sank to the floor beside them, his back against the cool wall. He did not turn on the lights, preferring the encroaching darkness. Hours passed without shape or sound, time losing all meaning. At some point near morning, as the first grey light filtered through the window, he realized something deeply unsettling. He could still breathe normally. His heart still beat in its steady, reliable rhythm. The world had ended, his world had shattered into a million pieces, and his body hadn't even noticed. The law would call this closure. Max Cross would soon learn how wrong that word could be. Chapter 4 of The Silent Verdict, titled The House Without Voices. Silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the absence of who used to make it. Days passed, or maybe it was only hours. Time no longer moved in a straight line for Max. It folded in on itself, becoming unreliable and thin. He continued going to work, a semblance of normalcy in a world turned upside down. Patients sat across from him, their voices filling the room with stories of panic, insomnia, and fractured relationships. He listened with the same calm attention as he always had, asking the right questions, offering careful, measured guidance. On the surface, nothing about his technique had changed, but his patients felt it. What unsettled them wasn't what he said, but what he didn't. He no longer reacted with the same warmth. His empathy felt distant. The subtle shift was a quiet crack in the professional mask he wore, a sign that the man who helped others heal was himself deeply wounded. At home, the silence was a physical presence. Max went through the motions of his evening routine. He cooked dinner, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. 3 plates, 3 portions, an act of muscle memory that his mind hadn't yet caught up with. He only noticed the mistake after sitting down at the empty dining table. The extra plate gleamed under the kitchen light, a stark reminder of who was missing. Without a word, he stood up, washed it, and placed it carefully back in the cabinet, closing the door on a life that was no longer his. The bedroom, a space once filled with shared whispers and soft breathing, felt unbearable. Its emptiness was too loud, so he slept on the couch instead, wrapped in a blanket that still carried a faint scent of the laundry detergent Luna preferred. It was a small, almost imperceptible comfort, a ghost of her presence in the fabric. One evening, his eyes landed on the refrigerator. A drawing, held in place by a single blue magnet, demanded his attention. It was Emily's, a child's masterpiece of joy, with an oversized radiant sun, drawn with defiant yellow crayon. Max stared at it for a long, long time. The drawing was a window into a world that felt a million miles away. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he took it down. He folded the paper once, then again. Each crease was precise, a desperate attempt to contain the overwhelming emotion the simple drawing evoked. He slid the small, folded square into the inside pocket of his coat, placing it close to his chest, a secret treasure he had to protect. That night, sleep offered no escape. Max lay awake, staring at the textured ceiling, his mind a relentless projector of memories. They came without order, vivid and sharp. The sound of laughter echoing in the kitchen, the faint sting of a small, forgotten argument. Emily's voice, clear as day, calling for him from another room. He tried to do what he taught his patients to do. He analyzed the memories like trauma narratives, searching for triggers, for associations, for cognitive anchors that might ground him. He dissected his own grief with the cold precision of a surgeon. But there was no relief, no catharsis, just the endless repetition of what he had lost. Just quiet. And in that profound quiet, something unfamiliar began to take shape inside his mind. It wasn't just grief, and it wasn't anger. It was a hollow space, a vacuum where all the sounds of his life used to live. Max Cross didn't yet realize it, but the silence was already changing him. Chapter 5 of The Silent Verdict, titled The First Crack. Some breaks are loud, a shattering you can't ignore. Others are so quiet, you don't even notice them until everything starts leaking through. Victor Hale was arrested 3 days after the incident. On every news channel, anchors threw around words like monster, deranged, inhuman. His photograph was plastered across every screen, his expression blank, his eyes calm, almost bored. It was an unsettling calmness. Max watched the broadcast from his living room, the volume turned down low. He found himself studying Hale's face, not as a husband, but as a psychiatrist. He analyzed the tension in his jaw, the subtle movements of his eyes, the complete absence of any visible fear. This wasn't the face of madness. This was the face of absolute control. Soon after, the police requested Max's presence. They didn't want him there as a grieving husband, but as a professional. They needed his psychiatric expertise. The system always did, and Max agreed without a moment's hesitation. But the nights were a different story. Sleep refused to come, and when it finally did, it brought no rest, just a chaotic slideshow of silent, fragmented images. His mind kept replaying moments out of sequence, stripped of all meaning. In response, Max increased his medication. Then he doubled the dosage. His colleagues, his friends, no one noticed. He kept up the appearance of being fine, of functioning. On the 7th night, he found himself standing alone in his kitchen, staring at the dark window. His own reflection stared back, looking intact, functional. And that's when the realization surfaced, slow and deeply unsettling. He wasn't crying. It wasn't because he was strong, and it wasn't because he had somehow healed. It was because something deep inside him had gone completely and utterly numb. He pressed his palm flat against his chest, searching for a feeling, a reaction, anything that just wasn't there. And somewhere deep in the quiet recesses of his mind, noticed uninvited a small fracture began to spread. It wasn't wide enough to feel. It wasn't loud enough to hear. But it was there, and it was permanent. The trial for his wife's murder hadn't even begun yet. But Max Cross was already losing something far more dangerous than hope.